Have you been hearing a lot about processed foods and about avoiding processed foods? And maybe there's some confusion around what exactly are processed foods. Join me and let's find out. So typically there are four categories when it comes to processed foods. And so let's review all of those categories and what exactly they are. Processed foods are anything that have changed from its original state. So if you're not going out and you're purchasing vegetables that are right in the vegetable bins and fruits, and something's been done to them, they're considered processed. So if they've been cut, washed, pasteurized, canned, frozen, mixed, or packaged, those are processed foods, but they are in the first category. They are called minimally processed foods. If you think about the vegetables that maybe I'm thinking of Costco. When you go to Costco, there's lots of vegetables that have been cut up. So they've got broccoli and cauliflower and celery and that type of thing, and they're put into packages for you, ready to eat. Blueberries, strawberries, all of those kinds of things, they are called minimally processed. So there's not much done to them. They are usually processed or prepared so that they are more convenient for you. They may have also been refrigerated or fermented or vacuum sealed, and those will fall under that first category of minimally processed foods. So the next category is called the processed culinary ingredients, and that includes butters, oils, sugars, and salts. And what happens to those is that they may be refined. So you think about the different types of oils that we purchase for using in salad or cooking. Those are refined. They may be milled or dried. And the third category is processed foods. So these include foods that have been canned. So if you think about like canned fish and fruits that are put into syrup and fresh bread and cheese, those are considered processed foods. They usually have 2 or 3 ingredients in them, and they are processed to make them more stable. They have added salt and sugars and things from group 2, which was the processed culinary ingredients. Moving on to category 4, and this is the ultra processed category. And these foods are the foods that you really want to avoid. Category 1 and 2, not so bad. Category 3, probably okay. But category 4 is something you definitely want to avoid. These foods have intensive manufacturing processes. They have also added sugars, oils, fats, milks, and they can even be oils, fats, and milks, but they've had extra things done to them. So we think about the hydrogenated fats and that kind of thing. A lot of these types of foods have ingredients like casein, lactose, gluten, maltodextrin, hydrogenated oils, protein isolates, high fructose corn syrup, and trans fats. They also could include colors, dyes, preservatives, and added flavors and non-sugar sweeteners, so things like aspartame, which you definitely want to stay away from. So why are these foods processed? Like, why are we eating processed foods? Why were they made in the first place like this? So they often taste better. So if we think about a person who is going to the store and they're looking at the shelves or the produce bins, I guess I could say, and they've got cauliflower sitting in there and broccoli and tomatoes and all of that. And you've got these nicely packaged foods on the shelf, on the other hand, that are already prepared for you. And all you need to do after working all day is go in and throw them in the microwave oven, goodness, or into an oven or into a pot that's, quickly steamed or whatever and ready to go. What are people going to choose? Unfortunately, with our busy lifestyles the way they are, more people will end up choosing the easier solution. When you think back in the days of maybe like around the 50s, 60s, and of course earlier than that, what do we picture? For the most part, I think we pictured mom at home cooking in the kitchen. I don't think many of us were going to McDonald's. I mean, probably just about the time when I was young, but before my time, in my parents' time, I mean, they were not going to McDonald's. It was like maybe once every few months or that kind of thing. But Most of the time, you know, wives were at home cooking meals and husbands were coming home at the end of the day, and kids would gather around the table with their parents and they would have a plate that included a potato, a meat, and a vegetable or something like that, right? And that's when, you know, look at the population back in those times. I mean, we weren't seeing the obesity that we were seeing, and we weren't seeing the type 2 diabetes and all of that in those days because people were not consuming the processed foods. So again, they taste better. They have the ingredients that are added to them. I mean, my preference is I do prefer like salads and fruits and vegetables in their natural form. But for many people that have grown up, you know, the generation that's coming up now, they prefer these foods. They're used to them. It's what they've been having. They have a longer shelf life and they are easier to consume. They're quick to digest too, unfortunately. And what they do cause is a blood sugar spike. More insulin is produced, and then you end up with insulin resistance and lowered immunity and inflammation from having these foods. They're stripped of their nutritional benefits and nutrients. And some of the foods do have some of these nutrients added back to them. So if you think about the cereals and the flours that we buy on the shelf, they've been processed and some of the stuff has been removed, but then it's added back. It creates an illusion of the food being healthy, but ultimately it's not. Many times these foods are super easy to digest, and what ends up happening is we eat our meal, this processed food, and it goes through our digestive system super fast. There's no fiber like we would have had if we were having the vegetables with their full of their fiber. And now, so the body doesn't have to work to digest the food. And then all of a sudden we're burning fewer calories, even just digesting our food, and we're hungry again all of a sudden. So these foods tend to have more calories in them. So if instead of having that nice meal that's, you know, maybe a salad and whatever else you're going to have, whatever you're reaching for that's processed tends to have way more calories. They have tons of sodium in them. There's more ingredients in them. So when you think back to that plate, you know, whether you eat meat or not, we still consider the meat and the potatoes and the vegetables, you know, there's hardly any ingredients in there to talk about. But when we look at something that's been processed, there's maybe 10 or 15 ingredients in them, and half the words we can't even pronounce. There's trans fatty acids or trans fats, which raise your low density lipoprotein, which is the bad cholesterol, and they lower your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. So this also leads back to what I was mentioning before about insulin resistance. So if you're looking to avoid processed foods, when you look at the boxes in the store and you're looking at the ingredients, if a box or anything, well, quite frankly, if a food comes in a box, it's probably something you should be leaving on the shelf to begin with. But if you must choose something, you want to choose something with the most limited amount of ingredients. Look for things that you can pronounce all of the ingredients and you know what they are. And you want to avoid things that have too much sugar and too much sodium. And remember, when you're looking at the nutrition facts and the ingredients, whatever the first ingredient is on the nutrition facts panel and the ingredients, that is the ingredient that is most, like it has the most of that ingredient in the food. So I encourage you to start trying to avoid processed foods. Get these out of your diet as soon as you can. And if you're struggling with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, these are definitely foods you don't even want to entertain having. So thank you for joining me, and I do look forward to seeing you next time.